You have spent the better part of your evening explaining yourself, laying out your reasoning with the patience of a man who believes that clarity will finally bring understanding, choosing your words with surgical precision, watching the face of the person across from you for that flicker of recognition, that nod of comprehension that never quite arrives, and you walk away from the conversation feeling not relieved but hollow, not connected but more alone than when you started, because you have given them everything and they have given you nothing in return, and you are left wondering what is wrong with you, why you cannot make yourself heard, why the people who matter most seem incapable of seeing what is so obvious to you. This is one of the most painful experiences a man can endure, the slow, grinding realization that no matter how clearly you speak, no matter how patiently you explain, no matter how many different ways you find to say the same thing, the people around you simply do not understand, and perhaps more devastating still, they do not seem to want to understand. And you are left carrying the weight of being invisible in the very rooms where you should be seen. Seneca knew this feeling, not because he was a misunderstood philosopher hiding in obscurity, but because he was the most visible man in the Roman Empire, the advisor to the emperor, the wealthiest man in Rome, a figure whose every word was analyzed, every action scrutinized, every motive questioned, and yet he wrote letters to his friend Lucilius that were not about how to be understood by others, but about how to stop needing to be understood at all. In letter 104, a letter he wrote while recovering from an illness at his villa in Nomentum, Seneca made a statement that cuts to the heart of this modern agony, observing that the mere place avails little for this purpose, unless the mind is fully master of itself, and can, at its pleasure, find seclusion even in the midst of business. He understood that the craving for understanding is not a sign of connection, but a symptom of dependence, a confession that your sense of self requires external validation to survive. And in letter 22, a letter on the futility of halfway measures, Seneca wrote something even more direct, warning Lucilius that he must withdraw himself from those showy and depraved pursuits, and that there are certain things which can be pointed out only by someone who is present, that the physician cannot prescribe by letter the proper time for eating or bathing. He must feel the pulse. What Seneca was really saying, beneath the surface of this medical metaphor, was that understanding cannot be transmitted from one person to another through words alone, that no amount of explanation can make someone see what they are not ready to see, feel what they are not capable of feeling, or understand what they have not lived through themselves. The people who do not understand you are not failing because your explanation is inadequate. They are failing because their perception is limited, and no amount of your effort can expand what they are unwilling to grow. This is the truth that most men never learn, the truth that Seneca placed at the center of his philosophy of self-sufficiency, the truth that the soul which seeks understanding from others becomes a slave to their judgments, because it hands over the keys to its own worth and waits for someone else to unlock the door. You have been trained by a culture that prizes communication, that celebrates vulnerability, that tells you that the solution to every conflict is more talking, more explaining, more sharing, and you have followed this advice faithfully. You have opened yourself up. You have laid your soul bare. You have given them your reasons and your justifications and your carefully constructed arguments, and still they do not see you, and you are left wondering what more you could possibly give. Seneca would tell you to stop giving. He would tell you that understanding is not a right you are owed, but a privilege that others must earn, and that your task is not to make yourself transparent to everyone who demands access, but to make yourself clear to the only person who truly matters, which is yourself. In letter 104, he wrote that he had run off to his villa not to escape the city, but to shake off a fever which was surely working its way into his system, and he insisted on departing in spite of his wife Paulina's efforts to stop him, because he remembered his master Gallio's words, that the disease was not of the body but of the place. What Seneca understood was that sometimes the sickness is not in you. It is in the environment, in the expectations, in the people who cannot see you because they are looking through the lens of their own limitations, and the cure is not more explanation, but more distance. Think about the hours you have spent trying to be understood, the sleepless nights replaying conversations, the careful phrasing, the strategic timing, the desperate hope that this time, finally, they will get it. And you can taste the frustration on your tongue like copper and ash. You can feel the tightness in your chest that never quite releases, You can hear the echo of your own voice in the empty rooms of your mind, repeating the same arguments to an audience that has already stopped listening, and you can see the photographs of moments you were not fully present for because you were too busy preparing your next explanation, and all of this time, all of this energy, all of this life, given away to people who were never going to understand you, not because you failed to explain, but because they were not capable of understanding. Seneca warned about this in Letter 22, when he wrote that no one will advise at long range, that we must take counsel in the presence of the actual situation. The people who are not in your situation, who have not walked your path, who have not faced your challenges, they cannot understand your choices because they are not standing where you are standing, and no amount of explanation can bridge that gap. The gap is not in your words, it is in their experience, and you cannot give them your experience through explanation any more than you can give them your hunger by describing a meal. They will understand you only when they have lived what you have lived, and until then, your explanations are not communication. They are performance, and you are performing for an audience that cannot appreciate the play because they have not read the script. So what do? How do you stop the exhausting cycle of explaining, justifying, defending, and hoping? How do you find peace when the people around you refuse to see you? Seneca gave us the answer, not in a single letter, but in the entire architecture of his philosophy. The answer is to stop seeking understanding from others and start seeking it from yourself. The answer is to build an internal compass so strong that you do not need external validation to know which direction you are facing. The answer is to become so clear about your own values, your own reasons, your own truth, that the opinions of others become irrelevant, not because you are arrogant, but because you are self-sufficient. This is the practice that Seneca would recommend, the discipline of the internal monologue. Every morning, before you step into the world and begin the exhausting work of explaining yourself to people who will not listen, sit in silence and speak your values to yourself. Say them out loud if you must, or write them down, or simply let them echo in the quiet chambers of your own mind. Tell yourself who you are, what you stand for, why you make the choices you make. Not for anyone else to hear, but for yourself to remember. Because the tragedy of the modern man is not that others do not understand him. It is that he has stopped understanding himself, and he is searching for his reflection in the eyes of others because he has lost the mirror of his own conscience. Seneca wrote in Letter 100, "For that the mere place avails little for this purpose, unless the mind is fully master of itself." He knew that changing your environment would not change your soul, that traveling to a new city would not make you a new person, that the approval of new people would not fill the void left by the old ones. The only thing that can change you is you, and the only understanding that can satisfy you is your own. And here is the deeper truth, the one that Seneca understood and that the modern world has completely forgotten, the truth that the soul which seeks understanding from others becomes a slave to their judgments, because it measures its worth by their reactions, calibrates its choices by their approval, and defines its identity by their perception. The man who needs to be understood has already surrendered his freedom, because he has made his peace dependent on something outside himself, something that can be withdrawn at any moment, something that will never be enough. The man who is free does not need to be understood, he needs only to understand himself, and once he does, the opinions of others lose their power over him. There is a phrase that Seneca would have recognized, an ancient wisdom that echoes across cultures and centuries, the wisdom that says you cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot explain yourself to someone who is not listening, and you cannot make someone understand you when they are not willing to see. The people who do not understand you are not your problem. They are their own problem. They are trapped in a prison of their own limitations, and you cannot free them by explaining yourself more clearly, any more than you can teach a blind man to see by describing the colors of the sunset. Your task is not to make them see. Your task is to see clearly yourself, and to act according to what you see, regardless of whether anyone else witnesses it. This is the freedom that Seneca offers, the freedom of the man who has stopped caring whether he is understood, not because he is bitter, not because he is cynical, but because he has found something deeper, something more reliable, something that no one can take from him. He has found the peace that comes from knowing who he is, and knowing that his worth does not depend on the approval of others, and knowing that his choices are his own, regardless of whether anyone else comprehends them. There will come a day when you stop explaining, when you stop justifying, When you stop performing your life for an audience that does not appreciate the show, and on that day, you will feel a lightness you have not felt in years. You will be in a conversation, and someone will misunderstand you, and you will let them, because you know that their misunderstanding is not your failure, it is their limitation. You will make a choice that someone does not approve of, and you will let them disapprove, because their approval is not your currency. You will live your life according to your own values, and you will stop caring whether anyone else can see the logic, because you see it, and that is enough. Seneca understood that the strongest men in history were not the ones who were most understood, they were the ones who understood themselves most completely. The loudest explanations come from the most insecure souls, the ones who are trying to convince themselves as much as they are trying to convince others, and the quietest confidence comes from the ones who have already settled the question in their own hearts. The man who does not need to be understood cannot be manipulated, cannot be controlled, cannot be broken, because there is nothing outside himself that he requires to feel whole. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause, breathe, feel the weight of the words you are about to speak, and ask yourself whether they will actually change anything, whether the person you are speaking to is actually capable of hearing you, whether your explanation is an act of communication or an act of desperation. And if it is desperation, stop. Let the silence speak for you. Let your actions speak for you. Let your life speak for you.